the inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. I'm Dan Hurley. More importantly, welcome to 2017. Today is a day to turn the page, and I've invited two people this morning for whom the new year will mean new responsibilities and new opportunities, because in November, voters chose them to assume new offices. In the second half of the show, I'll be joined by Cincinnatian Pat Fischer, who was elected in November to be one of the 7 justices on the Ohio Supreme Court. We begin this morning with Denise Driehaus, who was elected in November to assume one of the 3 seats on the Hamilton County Commission. She and Todd Portune now form only the 2nd Democratic majority on the commission since 1962. For the past 8 years, Driehaus served in the Ohio House of Representatives. Denise, welcome back.
Thank you.
And you're here without a campaign situation, which makes things a little bit nicer.
More relaxed.
More relaxed. Yeah. But on the other hand, one of the things I'd like to start with, because I think this says something about local politics, is that at least from my observation from the distance, is that Dennis Driehaus, who was your opponent.
Dennis Dieters.
Pardon me, Dennis. Dennis Dieters, who was your opponent, has been incredibly civil and open helping with this transition, and has allowed you sort of to get a running start without some problems and whatever.
Well, there are a number of attorneys that represent the county that wanted me in the room for the executive session, primarily around MSD. Right. And so I've been involved in those executive sessions. And so jumpstart might be understating it. I think I've had 3 or 4 meetings now with the attorneys in the county and the other county commissioners in the room.
But you've at least been able to be there and here, because that's going to be one of the big issues that you have to deal with.
It's very important to get caught up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've been in this legislative role for the last 8 years in Columbus. Being a county commissioner is not being a legislator. You have more administrative responsibilities. How are you sort of feeling your way on that question?
Well, I think the power of the county commission is by setting the budget. It becomes a matter of priorities. What do we want to fund and really invest in? Remember too, I wasn't in a majority in the legislature, and
that was my next question.
I am in a majority here. So to me, that's the primary difference, is that I will have some say as to how we move forward at the county. In the legislature, being one of 99 and one of a very deep minority, it was very challenging to kind of advance your own ideas. But Commissioner Portune and I have met, Commissioner Monzel and I have met about where we want to go moving forward. So I'm excited about the opportunity. But you are right, we don't set laws. We create priorities through a budget and then try to, I think, advance what the county wants to do with all the municipalities inside the county, which is something I'm learning, but I think it's so important to bring in the 49 jurisdictions to make sure they all feel a part of what we're doing at the county.
And I think that's important to stress right now. 49 jurisdictions, amazing fragmentation of local government. And if we went to a place like Indianapolis or we went to Louisville, they have resolved that. But here, so what sort of opportunities would you like to see for better shared services or better cooperation?
Well, I would like to go to all 49 and offer, first of all, to bring them in on a periodic basis. Maybe it's 4 times a year, maybe it's 2 times a year, and say, hey, let's get together, share ideas, what's working, what's not, and bring everybody together so we all do feel like we're a part of the same movement forward. In addition to that, though, I want to create a menu. I've talked to Jeff Aluda, the county administrator, about this.
Who's just become the full-time
and I really like Jeff, and I was glad of that. But there are opportunities, I think, to share services, to consolidate. Think of the Sheriff's Patrol or some economic development opportunities. And I'm not sure all of the jurisdictions understand what those opportunities are, because they're busy. They're mostly part-time elected officials in these small jurisdictions. I think they need some help trying to figure that out. And so as the county, then we go forward and say, here's the menu. Let's say there are 6 items on the menu. We don't mean to force any of this on you because everybody has a different circumstance, but consider it. Maybe there's some opportunity to save money and to do things more efficiently. So I'm excited about that. And I've talked to a number of jurisdictions about that, and they're like, oh yeah, let's see the menu, because they want to participate.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the things that sort of is around that, it's something that already exists, but it's the 911 system. But it came up in this budget cycle, and Dennis Dieters, I got it right that time, he wanted some of the budget issues resolved with that, but it was sort of, let's keep going with what we're doing for 6 months. Todd Portune wanted to give you a chance to get up and running. But these are ultimately budget questions with limited resources.
No doubt, but 911 should be pretty close to the top of the list. You know, we've been struggling with this funding for a while in the last couple of budgets, so we do need to resolve it in a long-term way and stop kind of hit and missing it. Oh, you know, here's a fund this time where we're going to fund the 911. Here's a fund next time. I mean, it needs to be more stable than that. It's a primary function of the county, but the idea is, in my view, to work within the limited resources, and I understand that. There are efficiencies, though, that I think can be had, and in addition to that, I want to invest money to grow the budget. So, you know, I don't want to operate in the pie and say, okay, this is it, it's finite year after year. What can we do to invest differently to grow the pie so that we can do this stuff better? What
would that mean? What would an example be?
Investing in economic development opportunities. The Port Authority is one place where that money can go. Some counties have revolving loan funds where we spur economic activity. It's a public-private partnership where the privates have come in and invested with the county and said, you know, we want to create some opportunities here where they might not exist otherwise. Let's figure that out. So I've been out to HCDC, the development arm of the county, and they're doing good work. That's also on the menu to let Gulf Manor and Deer Park and Mount Healthy and everybody else know, you know, if you need some help trying to strategically vision in your business district and spur economic activity, how can we help? We've got an entity that's doing some accelerator work, some coaching, business coaching. How can we do more and how can we help to create a more vital economy countywide and grow the pie?
Because that means more taxes, right?
That's right. More money into the general fund so that 911 then is fully funded through some of the excess revenue.
So you've been sitting in on these MSD meetings, and I know there may be a limit to what you can say, but can you give us any sense of where that stands, what the timeline is on the big issues of governance and administration, on cost, on all of that? What can you tell us publicly? And I know a lot of that has to be kept behind the scenes.
I cannot tell you much publicly because not only are these conversations happening in executive session, but we're also under a gag order from the federal judge. But I will tell you this, during the campaign, and I continue to believe this, that the city and the county have a joint interest here with MSD, and I am hopeful that the two will come together in a collaborative way and figure it out so that we can move forward, because the ratepayers are the ones that suffer from the delay. And so my posture has always been sooner than later, but it has to be an agreement where both the city and the county feel as though, you know, they are getting enough from the agreement to move forward.
Okay. So what other sorts of priorities as you go into this would you like to pursue, like to get on not just the menu for all of the entities, but on the agenda for the county?
So economic development's way at the top, but economic inclusion is part of that. So the county has not done a very good job of making sure that everyone is part of this growing economy. And so I would like to, and I've talked to Todd Portune about this, reinstate the Office of Economic Inclusion, make sure that we're being very intentional with the minority community. And by that, you know, again, we've got these chambers that exist in Hamilton County, the African American American chamber, the Indian chamber, the Latino chamber, bring everybody together and say, hey, how can we make sure that everybody has the opportunity to participate? The city does a pretty good job of this, and the state has started to do better. The county, though, is kind of stuck. And so if we have a full-time individual hopefully working on this in a very intentional way, bringing people together to say, hey, how can we do better in this space? That's something I'm very, I feel very strongly about. The other way, though, to diversify what the work of the county is to look at the boards and commissions on which we appoint individuals and say, how can we diversify what that looks like? Because these boards and commissions are so important, and I think we need to have those reflect Hamilton County, and right now they really don't. And so again, it's an intentionality behind diversification, and I think with that comes a buy-in from all these communities who may or may not have felt a part of it in the past.
Well, I have less than a minute left, but one of the things about diversification, you're only the second woman who has ever served on the county commission.
Yep.
I mean, last time I checked, there were about 50% of the county that were women.
That's right.
So that in itself says something about the need to be better at diversification.
Absolutely, and I think it's a great opportunity. I'm thrilled. I'm the ranking member on the finance committee too at the State House, the first woman ever to hold that role. So, you know, we're breaking some ground, but I think we serve as an example for young girls and young women to say, hey, public service, maybe that's for me too.
Well, again, congratulations.
Thanks.
Good luck, and we'll see what happens, and you'll be back here.
Yeah, thank you.
Many times. Stay tuned. After the break, I'll be joined by Pat Fischer, who will be sworn in as the Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court later today. Welcome back. We now turn to someone else with new responsibilities in 2017, the newly elected Ohio Supreme Court Justice Patrick Fischer, who won a seat on the Ohio Supreme Court in a very tight race against Democrat John O'Donnell. Patrick Fischer began his career as an attorney with Keating, Muthing, and Kleekamp, where he argued cases in courts throughout the United States. In 2010, he was elected judge of the Ohio First Court of Appeals, which sits here in Cincinnati. He has been president of the Cincinnati Bar Association and the Ohio Bar Association. Judge Fischer earned both his undergraduate and JD from Harvard University. Welcome to Newsmakers.
Thanks, Dan.
And I was saying this to you before we got rolling. It is very rare for me to have an opportunity to interview sitting judges. And I've never interviewed a Supreme Court justice, so I'm very pleased with this.
Well, my start day is today, January 1st, so you are interviewing a sitting justice.
A sitting justice, very good. Well, you know, what I think most people know about courts is trial courts,
Sure.
where they, through our reporting or newspaper reporting, see a case with lawyers arguing that with the defendant sitting there, with a jury perhaps in the box,
Sure.
But that's not what an appeals court is. And you've been on the District Court of Appeals for the last 6 years.
Yes.
Now you're going to the Supreme Court, which is also an appeals court. So what's the fundamental difference here?
The fundamental difference is that, well, there's two levels of appeals, as you said. The intermediate court, the Court of Appeals, is a court of error. And it says, as a matter of law, did the court below, trial court, make an error? It does not deal with changing the facts. The facts found by the jury are the same forever. Okay. That's unless there's a new trial order. But if it's appealed from the Court of Appeals, the issue is, in Ohio, the Supreme Court determines what cases it takes. Generally, there are a few cases it has to take, but generally decides what cases it takes and what issues of law it will talk about.
So it can ignore.
It could ignore a bunch of appeals on some issue they don't want to deal with. But they look at really what is of great public importance is really the I'm paraphrasing, but
right.
That's the standard. Does this affect the entire state? Does it affect a lot of people? is it going to affect day-to-day lives of many citizens?
And is it sometimes triggered by the fact that district appeals courts have disagreements?
Absolutely. That, in fact, the courts of appeal can even put in their opinion, Supreme Court, we differ. First district differs with the second district. You probably should look at this.
Okay.
They don't have to take it, but they can.
On December the 22nd, just a couple weeks ago, the Supreme Court issued a ruling in State versus Moore, dealing with juveniles and some cases about some issues around that. One of the things, again, that I think a lot of people think is that Supreme Court sort of sit on high and just issue edicts about principle. I want to listen to play a little bit of a report that our reporter, Anjanette Levy, did on this case, and then let's talk about it a little bit. Let's take a look.
A 4-3 decision by the Ohio Supreme Court is considered a win for some teenagers who were automatically sent to adult court after being charged with serious felonies such as aggravated murder and rape.
The Ohio Supreme Court has found that is unconstitutional. It's a due process violation.
Defense attorney Jay Clark believes juvenile cases should stay in juvenile court since children are more susceptible to outside influences. Clark says juveniles transferred automatically to adult court haven't been getting amenability hearings.
It allows a juvenile court judge the opportunity to look at that child as a person and determine if there are resources within the juvenile system that would be helpful to the child.
Clark says one of his clients, Amir Evans, could benefit from the ruling. Evans was charged with aggravated murder in adult court for a robbery that ended in a murder in 2015. Clark says Evans didn't fire the gun and had a minor record. In today's ruling, justices wrote, age should not be treated as the sole decisive factor in transferring a child for criminal prosecution, and all children should have an amenability hearing before being transferred to adult court.
I really am not shocked by the decision. This has been an argument that's been raised across the state probably since the legislation passed many years ago.
Okay, I don't want to ask you about the specifics of that case. That would be improper. But I think that does show some examples of how a case gets there.
Oh, absolutely.
And what a Supreme Court actually does.
And as Judge Hendon said, who is retiring,
right,
from the Court of Appeals, that it's been pending in different district courts of appeals over many years. So finally the Supreme Court had to say, we got to resolve this difference. We're going to make a decision. But it's brought the creation of law by a court, case law, is a byproduct of the resolution of a dispute between two or more parties. And the decision then throws off an opinion that then the lawyers look at and can advise their clients. But the Supreme Court is not out there just combing through statutes to see, oh, this one seems unconstitutional. The parties have to bring the dispute to the court. Otherwise, it doesn't get ruled on.
And the Supreme Court looks for the right case.
Correct.
Because there could be multiple cases. There's lots of juveniles who have been affected by this. But for whatever reason, the court made the decision
to take this case. Often they will take the case that is the most clear. If there are facts that kind of make it a unique case, probably not going to take it. But if it's a clear case with a clear issue and the facts are pretty undisputed and nothing unusual about it, that's the type of case. So that then the lawyers can discuss with their clients what are your legal rights under the law.
Another thing about appeals courts, Supreme Court, is that there are written opinions, very extensive written opinions.
Yes.
Now, you've been doing that.
Yes.
Which allows a judge to do what?
It's not what the judge is actually explaining why, how they reach the opinion. In fact, in my view, I write the opinion, there are a myriad of audiences. You got the public, you got the parties, you got the lawyers, you got other courts, but I also include the losing party. I need to be able to explain to the losing party how I reached my decision, logic, case law, whatever. And I think that's an important factor. I think it's interesting that a lot of people don't know much about the courts, and yet court candidates, judicial candidates, have actually not only said how they voted on an issue, they've said why in writing. And a lot of people don't look that up during election season, but they should. They should see what their judges do.
You've just been through an election that was close. Yeah. Had to run statewide. You'd never run statewide before. What's a judicial campaign like? And
wow. It's different than a legislative, or if you're running for governor or senator like Mr. Portman did, because you can't really speak on how you would rule. So you go out and you talk to people about your qualifications, you talk about judicial philosophy, but you do it statewide. So I was in all 88 counties at least once during the campaign, 107,000 miles through the state of Ohio. Around the equator of the world is 25,000, so literally I drove around the world 4 times in the state of Ohio. But there's a good part to it. You meet so many different people that somebody from Cincinnati might not meet in their entire life. And you get a feel for what Ohio is, the urban, suburban, rural, where there are hills and mountains in Appalachia and around here, but it's flat up north, or the lake region, people, Great Lakes. It's an invigorating thing as well as tiring.
In the federal court system, justices are appointed, not elected.
It's subject to the advice and consent of the Senate.
As we all know.
Yes.
What do you think about this election system of judges? Because this has been disputed at times.
It has. And as president of the State Bar has taken the position we should go to the Missouri plan, which is the governor appoints somebody, they serve for 2 or 3 years as a judge, and then the people vote just on that judge.
Up or down?
Up or down. And then if the person wins, they stay as a judge for a few more years. If they lose, the governor appoints another one. That's okay, as is the federal system, but I kind of like our system too, because it forces you to go out and reach out to people and meet people and understand the state in a way that you never would, because you're running against one other person. And so there's politics in all 3 systems. The question is, what type of politics do you want? You want behind the door with the Senate, and the president? Do you want, same thing, somebody get appointed by the governor? Or do you want the people to select? It's a matter of preference. I think either the electoral systems are actually better than the appointive system, the pure appointive, but the federal system. But I like elections, although it's hard because people don't pay attention.
Well, it's very hard from a reporter's point of view, too. I mean, I really care about government.
Yes, you do.
And it's very hard on this show because you invite 2 candidates on. First off, sitting judges rarely will say yes. But secondly, even if 2 people come on, they can only talk about that biography sort of thing,
biography,
theory.
And judicial philosophy.
And judicial philosophy.
But they really can't talk about a case.
Which can get pretty esoteric.
It is, but I explain it this way. There really are 2 judicial philosophies in the United States. I'm of the non-activist conservative side. I don't believe a court should be a legislator, a super legislature. Another side would be an activist judge who believes that his or her viewpoint should be part of the analysis. President Obama believes that. There really are only 2 right now in the United States. Those are the 2 basic. And which one do you like better?
One final question. How you're now going, your job, the court is in Columbus.
Yes.
How's this going to change your life? On a very personal level, not theoretical.
Well, I'll be spending a lot more time in Columbus at the court.
It's a wonderful commute, by the way.
Yes, it's an hour and 42 minutes from my house to the court. Not that I've timed it, but that'll change. It'll be interesting because everybody right now is so gracious. Congratulations, all that. But a judge has to make decisions. A justice makes decisions, and people sometimes like those decisions, and sometimes they don't. It'll be on a bigger scale. So courts of appeals, there's a joke that a woman had 2 children. One went off to sea, the other became an appellate judge. Neither were heard from again. But the Supreme Court's not like that. You're in the paper, it's a bigger deal. But The other thing that's interesting is my daughter is a lawyer, and she tells me what she thinks of my opinions. So these will be bigger. Her viewpoints will be bigger about my opinions.
So family dinners are
very interesting.
Very good, very good. Well, listen, thank you. You've been a wonderful person that I've known locally. I'm glad to see you're on the court.
Thank you.
You and Pat DeWine were both elected. It's the first time Hamilton County's had representation for quite a while.
Yes.
So good luck.
Thank you.
We'll follow you and we'll see what happens.
Dan, thank you.
And we'll let you know what we think.
I'm sure you will.
Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Have a good day and a great 2017.